They laughed at him, they called him boy, and thought he was just another face in the crowd. But the next day, when the truth came out, every single one of them wished they had never opened their mouths. If you love seeing karma served ice cold, make sure you smash that subscribe button right now, because this story will have you clenching your fists 1 minute and cheering the next. Music fades into slow piano. The morning sun poured over downtown Atlanta, gilding the glass towers with a warm orange glow. A young man named Marcus Carter walked toward the pristine marble entrance of Mid-South National Bank, wearing a crisp navy suit and carrying a leather briefcase that had seen better days. His mother had bought it for him when he graduated college, back before things got complicated. Marcus wasn't flashy. He didn't care about showing off. But inside that briefcase was something that could change his life and his family's future. Camera pans across City Street, bustling traffic, people rushing to work. It had taken Marcus years of saving and grinding through double shifts to build enough capital to finally purchase the old Carter family property, a small farm his late father had lost during the 2008 crash. This was more than a financial transaction. It was redemption. But to get there, he needed one thing: a business loan. Inside the bank, everything gleamed: polished floors, gold-trimmed counters, and the faint scent of lemon polish. Behind the glass partition, employees typed away with the calm arrogance of people who believed their jobs made them untouchable. At the center desk stood Mr. Walter Hensley, the branch manager. Mid-50s, silver hair slicked back, and a permanent smirk that screamed old money. His suit was perfectly pressed, his cufflinks glimmered, and his eyes sharpened the moment they landed on Marcus. Soft tension cue rises. Marcus smiled politely. "Good morning, sir. I have an appointment for 9:30. Marcus Carter." Walter's smirk twitched. Marcus Carter," he repeated, glancing at his tablet. "And what kind of business are you looking to start?" Marcus straightened his posture. "Not start, sir. Expand. I'm looking to purchase land that used to belong to my family. I've already put together a business plan, investment projections, and—" Walter held up a hand, cutting him off. Right, let's not get ahead of ourselves." Camera zoomed subtly on Walter's expression, a hint of disdain. The older man leaned forward, voice dripping with mock politeness. "You said the Carter property? That's what, south of town? Isn't that area a little rough?" Marcus blinked. "It's developing fast. The city just approved zoning for—" Walter chuckled under his breath. Sure. Everyone's got a dream." He gestured toward a nearby chair. "Sit down, Mr. Carter. Let's see what we're working with." Marcus sat, opening his briefcase. He handed over a neatly bound business proposal and financial documents. His hands were steady, but his chest burned with a quiet mix of nerves and pride. Walter flipped through the pages lazily, not even pretending to read. Then he looked up and said something Marcus would never forget. "So, Marcus," he said, drawing out the name like it left a bad taste. "Tell me, where exactly did you say you work? You don't look like the kind of man who's used to managing much money." Low sting, subtle racist undertone felt in the air. Marcus froze. "Excuse me?" Walter gave a smug smile. "Relax, son. It's just that, well, most folks who come in here asking for six-figure loans have business credentials. You have a construction job, right? That's what your paperwork says?" Marcus nodded, controlling his tone. "Yes, sir. I've been managing projects for 3 years. We built the new hospital wing downtown." Walter scoffed. "Uh-huh. So you're a foreman. That's nice. But let me be honest with you, Marcus. Banks like ours don't usually throw big money around to first-timers." He let the pause hang, his smirk widening. Camera pans to Marcus's clenched jaw. Marcus said carefully, "I've been a client here for 8 years. I have perfect credit, 0 debt, and the equity in my father's old property." Walter leaned back, chuckling softly. "You people always have a story, don't you?" Marcus's eyes flickered. "You people?" Walter's grin froze for a second, then he waved dismissively. "Don't be so sensitive. It's just an expression." Music fades into uneasy silence, tension building. For the next 20 minutes, Walter found every excuse to undermine Marcus. He questioned the legitimacy of his savings, the credibility of his job references, and even insinuated that the documents might be borrowed. Every line dripped with a patronizing venom that made Marcus's stomach churn. Finally, Walter closed the file with a snap. "Well, Mr. Carter, I'm afraid we just don't see this as a safe investment. But hey, chin up. Maybe start smaller. A used car lot, maybe? Something more your speed." Marcus stood slowly, keeping his voice calm. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Hensley." Walter gave him a thin smile. "Of course. Oh, and next time, appointments are for qualified applicants. Just something to remember." Soft gasp from a nearby teller who overhears. Marcus turned to leave, but Walter called after him. "Oh, and Marcus, you might want to use the side door. We've got a new client meeting. Important people. Don't want any confusion." The words hit like a slap. Marcus didn't reply. He walked out silently, shoulders straight, the door closing behind him with a muted click. Somber music plays. Distant city sounds fade in. Outside, Marcus stood on the sidewalk, heart hammering. He wanted to shout, to demand justice, but instead he took a deep breath. Not today, he thought, but soon. Fade to night. Distant thunder. That evening, Marcus sat in his apartment, laptop open. He scrolled through the documents he'd prepared, every one of them airtight. His plan was solid, he knew it, but the way that man had looked at him, like his skin was a liability, replayed in his mind again and again. And then, a thought struck him. He smiled slowly. Because what Walter didn't know was that Marcus had more than just ambition. He had connections, and one of them was about to make Walter Hensley regret every word he'd said. Music shifts, slow build of determination. The next morning, Marcus put on the same suit. But this time, he wasn't coming to ask for approval. He was coming to give orders. Marcus Carter walked through the doors of Mid-South National Bank the next morning, but today everything had changed. The sunlight reflecting off the marble floors felt different, almost electric. He wasn't just a client anymore. Today, he carried not only his plans, but a quiet certainty that no smirk, no condescending glance would go unanswered. Camera pans across Marcus's calm, determined face. Inside, Walter Hensley was already at his desk, sipping his morning coffee, completely unaware that Marcus had returned, not to beg, not to plead, but to reclaim control. Marcus approached the front desk with measured steps. "Good morning," he said, voice steady. The tellers glanced up, sensing the difference in his presence. Calm, authoritative, unshakable. Walter looked up, expecting the usual nervousness, but instead saw a man transformed. Marcus smiled faintly. "Mr. Hensley," he began, "we need to talk." Soft tension cue, close up on Walter's suspicious glance. Walter set down his cup. "Of course, Marcus. Have a seat." Marcus shook his head. "Actually, I think it's better if we stand." He handed Walter a tablet, and on it was a sleek, professional document, but not just any business plan. This was a proposal Walter couldn't ignore. Audited financial statements, endorsements from top city investors, and a proof of concept for the land redevelopment project. Walter scrolled through it, frowning. "Where did you get all this?" Marcus's grin widened, subtle but confident. "I have friends in high places, Mr. Hensley, people who believe in results, and I'm glad you'll finally see why I'm a qualified applicant. Not that it should have ever mattered what I look like or where I come from." Camera zooms on Walter's reaction, first sign of unease. Walter's smirk faltered. He cleared his throat. Well, it's impressive. Certainly more than what I expected yesterday. Marcus didn't flinch. Yesterday you humiliated me in front of my peers and your staff. Today I'm giving you a choice. Approve the loan or face the consequences of underestimating me. Music builds, suspenseful strings. Walter leaned back, trying to regain control. Consequences? What are you talking about? Marcus tapped a few buttons on the tablet. Suddenly, the bank's internal email system opened, a message from the CEO himself reading, Mr. Hensley, I've reviewed Marcus Carter's files and investment proposal. This project has my full support. Ensure the loan is processed immediately and assist Mr. Carter in every possible way. Signed, CEO James Carter. Close-up on Walter's horrified face, coffee cup shaking slightly in hand. Marcus's voice was calm, but every word carried authority. You see, Mr. Hensley, the man you dismissed yesterday as just another client happens to be your CEO's son. Not just a son, but the man personally overseeing this investment. And as it happens, I know exactly who holds the power here. And it's not you. The room went silent. Even the tellers who had whispered about Marcus yesterday froze, eyes wide. Walter stammered, trying to find words. I didn't know. Marcus raised a finger, his smile now razor-sharp. Of course you didn't, and that's why you'll never forget today. Music shifts, dramatic crescendo. Marcus continued, I'm going to let you do your job properly, Mr. Hensley, but remember this. Disrespect, racism, and condescension have consequences. Today, you learned that firsthand. He handed the tablet to Walter, who now fumbled through the documents with shaking hands. Marcus turned toward the tellers, giving a subtle nod. They looked back at him, awe and relief mixing in their expressions. Camera pans to Marcus walking confidently out of the office, slow motion, heroic lighting. As Marcus exited the bank, he didn't shout. He didn't celebrate. He simply walked into the sunlight, the weight of the previous day's humiliation replaced by the quiet satisfaction of karma delivered. Fade to exterior. City street, soft wind, triumphant orchestral swell. By the time the sun set, the story of Marcus Carter's return had already spread through the branch. Whispers of the CEO's son putting the arrogant manager in his place became the talk of the office. Walter Hensley sat at his desk, humiliated and humbling himself for the first time in decades, understanding exactly what it meant to underestimate someone based on skin color. Marcus, meanwhile, made a quick call to his investor network, sealing partnerships and ensuring that the Carter property project would move forward, bigger, stronger, and more profitable than anyone could have imagined. Soft, reflective music, slow fade. He paused for a moment, looking at the city skyline. Revenge wasn't about anger or destruction. It was about justice, strategy, and timing. And Marcus had delivered it perfectly. The next morning, Marcus didn't go straight to the bank. Instead, he arrived at Carter Investments HQ, a sleek glass building downtown, where the city's most influential financiers walked its halls. His father's old friends, longtime business partners, and a few key investors had already gathered for a meeting about the redevelopment project. Marcus stepped in confidently, briefcase in hand, every step purposeful. Camera pans across Marcus's determined expression, soft light highlighting his face. Inside, the investors exchanged nods. They knew Marcus not just as the CEO's son, but as a man with vision, integrity, and drive. Today, though, the story of Walter Hensley's arrogance had preceded him. Whispers of a racist bank manager humiliating Marcus circulated quickly. Close-up on Marcus leaning over a table with investors, pointing to detailed architectural plans. Marcus spoke with precision, explaining how the Carter property redevelopment would not only revitalize the community, but also create jobs, attract high-value tenants, and increase the city's tax revenue. The investors were impressed, some even leaning in, whispering to each other, He's brilliant, just like his father. Meanwhile, back at the bank, Walter Hensley sat at his desk, still reeling from the CEO's directive and Marcus's composure. But pride doesn't die easily. He wasn't about to accept humiliation quietly. He called a few of his contacts in the finance industry, trying to dig up any dirt on Marcus. "There's got to be something," he muttered, tapping his pen nervously. Suspense cue. Camera pans to Walter's shaking hands. Unbeknownst to Walter, Marcus had anticipated this. Days before, he had quietly hired a reputable private investigator to monitor any attempts to undermine him. By the time Walter made his calls, Marcus already had a full record of Walter's attempts at sabotage, emails, phone logs, and notes. Music swells, tension rising. Later that afternoon, Marcus returned to Mid-South Bank, not just to finalize the loan, but to make a statement. He walked in like he owned the place, confident, calm, commanding respect. Tellers stepped aside instinctively. Walter looked up, panic flashing across his face. "Mr. Carter, Marcus cut him off smoothly. "Sit down, Walter. I want to make sure you understand something clearly." He slid a thick folder across the desk. Walter opened it, and his eyes widened in disbelief. The compiled evidence of his own actions, all neatly organized. Every condescending comment, every attempt to belittle Marcus, every phone call trying to discredit him, all documented. Dramatic close-up. Walter's face draining of color. "Do you see, Walter?" Marcus said slowly. "This isn't about anger. It's about accountability. People think their titles give them power over others until they're shown that respect is earned, not demanded. And when respect is denied, consequences follow." Walter swallowed hard, struggling to find words. I didn't realize." Marcus's voice hardened slightly. "You didn't realize? You humiliated me publicly, questioned my credentials, and even implied my skin made me unworthy. Yesterday you thought I was powerless. Today you realize how wrong you were." Camera pans across tellers watching silently, tension thick in the air. Marcus reached into his briefcase and handed Walter a formal letter from the CEO, copied to corporate HR. "Walter Hensley is hereby instructed to attend mandatory sensitivity and management retraining sessions. Any future misconduct will result in immediate termination. Signed, James Carter, CEO." Walter's jaw dropped. The room was silent. The tellers exchanged astonished glances. Marcus didn't gloat. He simply nodded, collected his documents, and stood tall. Heroic music swells, slow zoom on Marcus's calm, victorious demeanor. But the story didn't end there. Outside the bank, the city's local news crew had been tipped off by Marcus's team about a human interest story, highlighting the bank manager's racist behavior and Marcus's rise to success. By evening, social media buzzed with the headline, "Local CEO's son turns the tables on racist bank manager, shows the power of justice and strategy." Camera zooms in on Marcus watching the news on his phone, faint smile. Back at the bank, Walter Hensley's humiliation became public. Colleagues who had once feared him now avoided his gaze. Calls came from headquarters demanding full compliance with Marcus's project. Marcus, however, didn't gloat. Instead, he focused on the real work, securing the loan, signing contracts, and preparing to launch the redevelopment project that would transform the Carter property forever. Uplifting orchestral music, montage of Marcus closing deals, shaking hands with investors, walking through the old property with architects. Even more twists awaited. A rival investor who had doubted Marcus the day before now sought his partnership. The city council invited him to speak at a community event, recognizing his vision and leadership. Marcus had not only reclaimed what was his family's legacy, he had turned humiliation into a platform for influence and respect. Dramatic pause, close up on Marcus's contemplative gaze at sunset over the city, and deep down, Marcus knew Walter would never forget this day. Not the way Marcus had looked him in the eye, calm, composed, and untouchable. Not the way every effort to belittle him had been neutralized and documented. Not the way power had shifted quietly, decisively, but with lasting impact. Fade to reflective music. City skyline glows in twilight. Marcus's revenge wasn't about shouting or confrontation. It was about strategy, precision, and timing. He had taken yesterday's humiliation and turned it into a narrative of triumph, justice, and empowerment. A story that would be remembered long after Walter Hensley left that office, humbled and exposed.